Well, a new survey released by the Connecticut Education Association this morning is shedding light on inequities in the classroom.
That survey highlighting safety issues and a lack of student learning opportunities and resources in the state's lowest performing school districts. Fox 61's Angelo Bavaro joins us live from the Capitol this morning with more on this. Angelo, good morning.
Good morning. So the CEA says that those inequities you were just talking about have not only been exposed by this coronavirus pandemic, but also intensified because of it as well. So now let's break down some more of what was in that survey. I know we mentioned some stuff at the top of the hour. Again, it was done by the CEA. It's called the School Equity Survey. And nearly 2,000 teachers cited huge inequities between school districts. And that is especially true in the state's alliance districts, which are the 33 lowest performing districts here in Connecticut. And new this half hour, we want to read some of the comments from teachers who responded to that survey. One of them writing, quote, "My technology is inadequate, but my district is still pushing teachers to fully live stream our instruction." Another saying, quote, "CDC guidelines for quarantining seem to vary based on the racial composition of schools." And another teacher writing, quote, "We in the inner city are still underfunded and overworked." And now let's recap some of the highlights that we mentioned at the top of the hour from this survey. Now, of the teachers that responded, nearly half of the ones working in those alliance districts say they are not being provided with the adequate amounts of PPE they need, and that's compared to nearly 40% of non-alliance teachers who responded. The survey also finding less than half of those working in alliance districts said their classrooms are being cleaned or disinfected daily, and that's compared to nearly 70% in non-alliance districts. And 3/4 of those same alliance district teachers say they are not confident in the contact tracing measures their schools have in place. And 64% of teachers from other districts also saying the same thing. And maybe the most troubling piece of data collected is that 61% of alliance districts and 41% of other districts say there is no effective strategies to help engage students who are absent. Now, we have reached out to the State Department of Education for a response and comment to this new survey. We have not heard back just yet, but of course we'll keep you updated throughout the morning. We are live in Hartford this morning. I'm Angelo Bavaro, Fox 61 News.